Hey you guys, and welcome back to another one of my videos. If you're new here, my name is Holly and thank you so much for watching. Firstly, let's get into my earrings. These ones are little knives. I thought they were really cute. I got these ones from a store called LMB, which I will link below, but also, as always guys, if you want to shop from my friend's small business, the Aurora Collective, she also sells earrings as well as like candles and bath bombs and lots of Christmas stuff too, so I'll link her below. Make sure to check her out if you want to support a small business this Christmas. But without further ado, let's get into this case. So this case is a pretty wild one, so grab some snacks, grab a drink. I have my almond mocha with me, so let's go. But today I wanted to cover the case of Jessica Camilleri. This case is one of the more brutal cases that I have covered on this channel, and I'll be covering it a little bit differently as Jessica is actually the perpetrator, not the victim, but I just felt like it would make more sense if I told it from her perspective, so let's get into it. So Jessica Camilleri was born on the 12th of October 1993 to her parents Rita and Vince Camilleri in Sydney, New South Wales. Not much is known about Vince, but Rita was described as a beautiful, loving mother that would do literally anything for her daughter. She was described as thoughtful, giving, humble, and someone who would literally take the shirt off her back to help anybody. She was just one of those people that you could always count on to give you a hand if you were ever in a bad situation. So Jessica grew up in the St Clair area, which is about an hour out of the Sydney CBD. St Clair is a quiet suburb with reasonably affordable housing. Crime rates in the area are pretty low as well, and it means that a lot of families are living in that area. I mean, that's not the only reason families are living in that area, but it's just a nice area for families to grow up in. And Jessica also had one sister who was called Christy, who is a few years older than her, and I don't think growing up the two girls were overly close. When Jessica was really young, her parents Rita and Vince felt like there was something a little bit different about her. She didn't act like Christy or any other kids her age, and she had delayed developmental milestones such as walking, talking, and coordination from a very young age. When she was really little, she was actually diagnosed with autism, attention deficit disorder, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And in school, teachers noticed her delays in reading, writing, maths, and language. At school, Jessica was bullied pretty badly. She was different from her peers, and a lot of kids chose to pick on her because of this. And Jessica really didn't understand why. And I feel like regardless of the person that Jessica turned out to be, this part just made me really sad. Kids can be really savage sometimes, and Jessica became really angry at the fact that she was the target. A lot of the time she would react with rage, and I read that around this time she was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder. I actually personally hadn't heard of IED before this, but it's basically a behavioral disorder characterized by explosive outbursts of anger and or violence that are often to the point of rage that are disproportionate. I can't say that word. Disproportionate to the situation at hand. Impulsive aggression is not premeditated and is defined by a disproportionate reaction to any provocation, real or perceived. Jessica also had deficits in judgment and awareness of other people's thoughts and feelings, and empathy due to her autism. Growing up, she would also struggle with daily activities such as grocery shopping, catching transport, banking, home care, and also employment. School was something that Jessica also really struggled with. She actually attacked other kids multiple times. More often than not, the people she would attack would be females, and Jessica would pull their hair. I guess this was like the most common way that she would lash out at other people. A lot of kids were really scared of her. She was aggressive, and she wasn't small either. She could do a lot of damage if she wanted to. In 2009, Jessica was in year 9 and things weren't traveling too well. She actually ended up attacking a boy. She bit his arm, and she also attacked his girlfriend too. I only read on one article the reason for this attack is because she was obsessed with the boy and she wanted to be with him, but like I said, that was only on one article, so I don't know if that is true. But in saying that, around this time Jessica was starting to form these obsessions with men where she would fantasize about being with them, and I will talk more about this in a little bit. The following year in 2010, when Jessica was in year 10, she again assaulted a girl, and I think at this point the school had just had enough, so this actually resulted in her being expelled. Following her leaving school, Jessica was in a transition to work program. These programs are government-funded employment and education initiatives that have been created to help early school leavers and young people facing job search challenges to prepare for work and find a job. But not long after she started, she was actually kicked out of this program too for, I'm sure you guys guessed it, violent altercations with someone else that was in the program. Jessica's mom, Rita, really tried to support her through all of this. She loved her daughter and she just wanted the best for her. Although Rita was really frustrated. She wanted her daughter to work and have her independence, and she really had hoped that this program would be the one to help Jessica achieve this. Rita understood Jessica's behaviors, and she also understood why Jessica was kicked out of the program, but she just couldn't help but feel like she was being let down by the system. She felt like there wasn't enough support. She also worked really hard to keep Jessica out of institutions and publicly provided facilities created for people with learning or developmental disorders or psychiatric illnesses. And the reason she did this is because her daughter Jessica didn't want to spend time at these places. And Rita wanted her daughter to be happy. It meant though that she had a lot of pressure on her to care for Jessica, and she never really had a break. And I believe that this was the cause of a lot of tension in the family too, with some other family members feeling like Rita did too much for Jessica. Many people with autism have intense and highly focused interests, and this was definitely true for Jessica, as she was obsessed with horror movies. She spent hours and hours and months and years watching and rewatching these sort of movies. And like I said, this went on for years. She was absolutely obsessed. And you can tell, I believe her Facebook has been taken down, but I saw screenshots of posts on her Facebook where she had talked about different horror movies that she was into, and she had posted photos of herself looking like what the people in horror movies would look like. I'll insert the photo here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But she lived and breathed horror. One of the movies that she was really keen on is a movie called Jeepers Creepers. It's a horror movie about a brother and a sister who, while driving home through isolated countryside from spring break, encounter a flesh-eating creature which is in the midst of its ritualistic eating spree. According to IMDb, at least. I've never actually watched this horror movie, as they scare me way too much. I can watch true crime any day of the week, but horror movies, I'm like, hell no. I literally don't know why, but that's just what I'm like. Her other favorite horror movie was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is about 5 friends who head to rural Texas to visit the grave of a grandfather. On the way, they stumble across what appears to be a deserted house, only to discover something sinister within. Something armed with a chainsaw. Jessica would constantly watch these movies from 2013 to 2019, and she had a lot of time to do this because she actually didn't have any friends besides her mum, who she lived with. By this point, her father had actually moved out because sadly he and Rita ended up separating a few years before 2019, and I believe one of the main reasons is because Vince and Rita didn't see eye to eye on the treatment that was given to their daughter. I can only imagine how hard it would have been looking after Jessica though. And by this point, Jessica and her sister were not close at all either. Her sister, Christy, had actually moved out. She was actually married, and she had a little boy who was 4 years old. Or 4 years old in 2019, so he must have been born in 2015. Maths is not always my strong point. But for you guys to really understand why this horror movie obsession was alarming, we need to delve into Jessica's past a little bit more. Before I do that though, because I feel like I can see the comments, I want to make it very clear that just because someone is into horror movies does not mean they are a violent person. All I'm saying is, with the information that has been provided on this case, there seems to be quite a correlation between her horror movie obsession and the actions that she committed in 2019. Like I said in the beginning, Jessica was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder from a very young age, and in primary school and high school there were incidents where she would assault other kids. And I spoke about these times a little bit, but as well as this, there were times in public where Jessica would lash out. One time when she was in a doctor's surgery, she assaulted someone unprovoked. She had also previously gotten an assault charge for pulling the hair of a supermarket checkout worker, and another charge for for an attack on a lady with a baby. Due to Jessica's multiple diagnoses when these incidents occurred, she would be referred to mental health professionals instead of going through the justice system. And these professionals were there to try and help Jessica put plans in place to help prevent her from having these outbursts. But unfortunately, she would continue to struggle with her intermittent explosive disorder. Rita had tried everything to help Jessica too. There was actually one time where she paid a medium around $2,500 to try and get the devil out of Jessica. And I feel like this in itself really shows how desperate Rita was to just try and help Jessica. Jessica also developed an obsession with calling strangers. She would repeatedly call these numbers, and if the person on the other end of the phone was a male with a voice that she really seemed to like, she would call that number even more. At times, she was known to ask the males on the phone repeatedly to tell her that they loved her, and she would ask and ask and ask until she got the result that she wanted. On the flip side, if Jessica felt disrespected by whoever was on the phone, she would get really angry and she would threaten them. A lady called Natalie Nalem was one of the people that Jessica would repeatedly call and threaten. She received over 22 messages from Jessica in October of 2015 alone. And in these messages, Jessica would threaten her and her husband, saying things like, "I will come over to your house with a knife in my hand and slit your throat, and I will shred off your head to your neck and you will have no neck left." So really nice stuff. Another receiver of Jessica's calls was Matthew Layfield. Jessica will call him up to 100 times per day for about a year in 2018 to 2019. Jessica even managed to work out his business phone number as well as some of his colleagues' numbers and his family members' phone numbers, and she would call him too. On these calls, she would sometimes apologize for the frequency, but she would also say things such as, "I will stab you and cut off your head with a knife." And you might be wondering where Rita was in all of this, and she was well aware of these calls and she tried everything to get Jessica to stop. But like I said before, Jessica was a big girl and by this point she was an adult. So Rita would try and stop her, but Jessica was too strong and just too determined. And I believe this was a big source of conflict in their relationship. On the 19th of July 2019, Jessica got up really early and she started making phone calls to a man. I don't know the man's name, so for the sake of this video, we'll call him James. She called James over 30 times that day, and in one of the calls, she told him that she hoped he got cancer and died. And Rita, like all the other times, she just really wanted Jessica to stop, and she didn't know what to do, so she decided to call the police and she asked for one of them to come out to their house and talk to Jessica. So Senior Constable Ale Ross came out and spoke to Jessica that day, telling her to stop and warning her that if she didn't stop, she could get in trouble with the police. And of course, this annoyed Jessica. She was annoyed at her mum for calling the police, and this caused a lot of tension in the Camilleri household. On the following day, the 20th of July, Christy, Rita's other daughter, had asked Rita if she would look after her little boy. For the sake of this video, I'll call him Arlo, and Rita looked after Arlo often, and on this day he was actually going to sleep over. Jessica, who was Arlo's aunt, didn't like when he would come over and sleep over because she was really possessive of her mum, and she got jealous of the fact that Rita would give attention to Arlo when he was over. Living next door to the Camilleris was a lady who was called Mrs. Heard. And on this day, the 20th of July, Mrs. Heard had actually started suffering from chest pains. And she didn't live with anyone who could drive her, so knowing how good and kind-hearted her neighbor Rita was, she decided to go over there and ask Rita if she could drive her to the doctors. And Rita of course said yes, and she immediately started getting her and little Arlo organized for the drive. And this seemed to set off Jessica. Jessica was yelling, she was calling Arlo a bastard, and she was screaming about the fact that he was taking too long to get ready. And Jessica insisted on coming with them, and in the car on the way to the doctors, she turned her aggression to her mum, saying things such as, "You have that little bastard way too often." And this poor boy, imagine being a 4-year-old and having someone scream about you and call you rude names. Like, that must have just been so scary for him. And Jessica continued continued to carry on while Mrs. Heard was in the doctor's surgery. Jessica had felt like a man on the street looked at her the wrong way while she was carrying on, and this of course was her mum's fault. Mrs. Heard in the trial said that when she came out of the doctor's surgery, Jessica was screaming and swearing, little Arlo was crying, and Rita was just trying to calm Jessica down. That evening, Rita called a doctor to the home as Jessica was complaining of stomach issues, and Dr. Eliza Hassam arrived at the family home just before 9:30 that night. When she arrived, she could hear Jessica on the phone. Jessica was actually on the phone to KFC. She was trying to order a second dinner, and as well as this, she was trying to get whoever was on the phone to tell her that they loved her. Rita asked her to hang up the phone as the doctor was there and waiting for her, but she just ignored her mum. Rita tried multiple times to get Jess off the phone, and eventually Eliza just had to leave as Jessica was just refusing. Jessica was really angry at her mum, and Rita was really angry also that her daughter had continually ignored her requests to get off the phone. Rita was so upset by this and Jessica's just outright refusal that she actually wanted to call an ambulance because she wanted her daughter to go to hospital and get some help. Of course, Jessica didn't want to, and so they began to fight over Rita's phone as she was trying to use it to call an ambulance. And Jessica managed to get the phone off Rita, and so Rita attempted to go into Jessica's room to get her phone to call the ambulance. Jessica followed her and they fought in the room. Because Jessica was so much stronger, she managed to push Rita down and then she dragged her into the kitchen. She grabbed a kitchen knife and started stabbing Rita, her own mother, in the head and neck. She stabbed her so many times that she decapitated her own mum. The attack took place over many minutes, and Jessica used 7 different knives. And Rita was actually awake for a lot of this as she had over 90 defense wounds on her body, which shows that she was trying to defend herself from the attack for a long time. I can't imagine how much pain she would have been in, and in the end Rita ended up with over 100 stab wounds all over her body. And on top of this, Jessica cut off the tip of Rita's nose, she cut off her tongue, and she removed both of her mum's eyeballs. And this part is honestly just heartbreaking, but because of all the commotion, little Arlo woke up and he came out of his room to see what was going on. When he saw that his grandmother was being attacked, this brave 4-year-old little boy jumped on Jessica's back and tried to get her to stop. And when this didn't work, Arlo grabbed a cardboard toy box lid and started hitting Jessica with it to try and get her to stop. Jessica pushed him away, and because she was holding a knife when she pushed him, it actually cut his cheek really deeply. And she must have pushed him really hard because he also sustained head injuries that needed to be sutured after the incident. And at some point in the attack, he also vomited, which was most likely a trauma response to what he was seeing. But once Jessica stopped stabbing her mum, she actually grabbed the decapitated head and took it outside. She was making her way to her neighbor's house and she actually dropped the head along the way. But when she got to her neighbor's house, she asked them to call emergency services, which they did. She herself spoke on the phone to the operator, and I will link the phone call below because it's really interesting to listen to because she's just so calm. And on the phone call, she says, "I just kept stabbing and stabbing and stabbing her, and I took off her head." She also first claimed that she only started stabbing her mum because Rita was trying to stab her first. She said Rita dragged her, pulled her hair out and broke her finger, but there's no way that this could be true because Jessica had no material injuries. Jessica pleaded not guilty to the murder of her mum by way of mental illness, and so a trial was set. At this trial, Jessica's defense was that she was incapable of understanding the extent of her actions due to her mental conditions. Jessica herself had spoken about her love for horror, and in court, Justice Helen Wilson stated how there was a link between her obsession with horror and the removal of her mum's eyes. She said that Jessica did this slowly and carefully with a sense of curiosity sparked by her obsession with horror movies. The jury ultimately decided that the crime was spontaneous, and Jessica's psychiatric illness caused a substantial impairment upon her mind at the time, and she was charged with manslaughter. She was sentenced to 21 years and 7 months in jail, and her sentence will end on the 19th of February 2041. And although this sentence ends then, she'll actually be able to apply for parole 16 years and 2 months into the sentence, which means that potentially she could get out of prison anytime time on or after the 19th of September 2035. She was sent to Silverwater Women's Prison in a section called Willa East, which is the maximum security section. And it seems like in the last 2 years that Jessica has been in prison, she really hasn't learnt much, as she's already attacked at least 2 other people. She aggressively pulled one inmate's hair, and her reasoning for this was because she just apparently felt upset. And she threw hot tea on another inmate because of a disagreement with food. And for the hot tea one, she was charged with assault, but she actually received no penalty. And I didn't know if I should include this part, but since then Jessica has been quoted saying that prison life is hard. And I'm sure prison is hard, Jessica. Probably not as hard as being murdered by your daughter though. I feel like that quote kind of does show how out of touch with reality she is though. And I hope personally that she's never released. I feel like she will be eventually. She'll have to be, but I don't know. I wonder where she'll go, because it's not like her sister would take her in. But anyways, you guys, that is all the information I have on this case. I'm sorry that I didn't focus more on Rita and the person that she was, but I honestly just couldn't find that much information on her. But from everything that I read, she was just a beautiful, wonderful, loving, giving soul. And the fact that she looked after Jessica for so long really speaks to that, because it would be such a hard job. And I feel like she just really truly loved her daughter. In court, her sister, so Rita's sister, was quoted saying that she had concerns about Jessica and her sister's safety, and Rita just would see past all those concerns. She always insisted that Jessica be kept at home and insisted that she continue to look after her daughter, because she really just wanted Jessica to be happy. That's what Jessica wanted. She didn't want to be institutionalized, and it's sad that she fought so hard for Jessica's rights for it to just all turn around and end up like this. But that is everything that I have on this case. I hope you guys found this one interesting. It is definitely a really brutal one, and please leave below suggestions of other cases that I can do. This case was actually a suggestion from one of you guys, so thank you so much. I found this one really, really interesting to research. But yeah, that brings me to the end of this video. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I hope that I will see you in my next video. Bye, you guys.